Despite being one of Chapter 4's most beloved new characters, Yarnaby's life is one filled with absolutely devastating tragedy. Even though his cute exterior and violent nature were standout features of his character, this dark backstory was always hanging in the background. In this video, we're gonna take a more in-depth look at the absolutely devastating backstory of Yarnaby. Like all the children of Playcare, a young boy named Quinn Davidson was taken to the game station and tested on his abilities. He scored low and little value was seen in him. Quinn wasn't like the other children. His behavior was very different and even concerning to the counselors. Regardless, the doctor, Harley Sawyer, still attempted to encourage him to do better through a simple conversation. Remarkably, this works. Through his words, Sawyer manages to get Quinn to improve under his watch, and then he goes on to become Experiment 1166. Despite a connection being between the two, Sawyer only speaks of Yarnaby in a demeaning way. He refers to him as it and uses other words such as pathetic and creature. To Sawyer, his subject is no longer Quinn, he's not even Yarnaby, he's just number 1166. While Yarnaby has next to no cognitive functions, he does possess great strength and loyalty, two things Sawyer uses to his advantage. Yarnaby is isolated from everyone but Sawyer to be his personal bodyguard. As Sawyer states, "By the time I'm done with it, I'll be its entire world." And sadly, this will prove to be true. Once Sawyer meets his own demise at the hands of Leith Pierre and Dr. White, Yarnaby is left alone and he feels it. Dr. Carmine McCabe reports on how he felt lost without his master, despite the apathy and poor treatment he received from Sawyer. He lacks any motivation or desire to do anything, he just waits hopelessly for his master to return. McCabe notes how this is proof that the little boy within Yarnaby, Quinn, is still there and grieving in the same way a human would. Ultimately, Yarnaby would die under orders to protect Sawyer. True to his word, Sawyer ensured Yarnaby would know nothing but him. His human life was taken from him, his world was limited to just him, and his final demise would be because of him. In a tragic irony, despite him being seen as a failure by Sawyer, Yarnaby was functioning exactly how he was supposed to be. His 1970s toy description was a lion with a heart of gold and a smile that touches your soul. Originally released as part of a wildlife conservation campaign in the 1970s, Yarnaby has seen regular releases in the years since. Believe us when we say Yarnaby wants nothing more than to make you his entire world. Yarnaby was supposed to be a constant companion and form of support for children. In his bigger body form, he would fulfill this role perfectly, but for the worst kind of person.
Would you wanna be my friend? Wow, aren't I glad to have a friend like you? Without someone like you to love, why, I think I'd just come apart at the seams.
Tragedy is something which follows all toys within the factory, so it's no surprise that Yarnaby isn't any different. However, his story also gives us an opportunity to discover more about Harley Sawyer and the lives of the toys as a whole. During the Chapter 4 ARG, we were shown a transcript of the conversation Sawyer had with Quinn. Here we can see that Quinn is an outsider, which makes him even more vulnerable. Sawyer says that he sees the real Quinn. When a child is an orphan, and in an orphanage as large as Playcare, it's very easy to see how a child may feel lost and alone. As a result, these small words could have a huge effect on a small child like Quinn, and this is the start of the undying loyalty which we see between the two. We saw a similar dynamic between Catnap Theodore and the prototype in Chapter 3. Whether in their toy forms or human bodies, these are children who are scared and alone, and that makes the idea of companionship in any form so desirable to them. Not only does this give us a real insight into how dark the story is within Puppy Playtime, but it's a great way to humanize the toys and put us in their shoes. Are we seeing animals run wild, or children who have been destroyed in the most vicious ways by people who swore to protect them? Yarnaby can also be used as a way of cementing the parallels between Sawyer and the DC villain the Joker. Both are maniacal and ruthless in their actions, and they also have sidekicks with unrelenting loyalty. Harley Sawyer has Quinn Davidson, and the Joker has Harley Quinn. Yes, it's that obvious. In both cases, the sidekicks have the vulnerabilities exploited in order for them to remain close to their partner. Interestingly, Yarnaby isn't the only character Sawyer has done this with. After Yarnaby's death, Sawyer nonchalantly introduces his other pet, Baba Chops. While we don't know anything about Baba Chops and her human life, we do know about her character description, which tells us a lot. The black sheep of the bunch, Baba prefers to keep her space. Like, a lot of space. Too much space. She can be distant, quiet, low energy, and it usually requires a lot of coaxing to get her out of the house. Luckily for her, she has some very persistent friends. She usually perks up after a while, but the next day, we're right back to the same tune. In a similar way to Quinn, Baba Chops is an outsider, and despite the fact that she is supposed to have friends, we don't see any around her in Chapter 4. If Yarnaby's bigger body is almost identical to his product description, it's not a reach to believe that Baba is the same. Sawyer is using his influence on both of them to manipulate them into doing what he needs. It doesn't matter who gets hurt, Sawyer will destroy everything to get what he wants. There's also another way in which Sawyer could be controlling his personal toys. Food. The toys are starving. It's one of the first things we see when we get to the factory. It's repeatedly written on the walls in Huggy's chase scene. It's constantly mentioned in reports on how the toys have an active digestive system, and the toys are heard complaining of their hunger in Safe Haven. Poppy herself even has to agree with what the prototype says about using the bodies from the Hour of Joy as food, as the toys would starve and die without them.
Doesn't make me feel better about the bodies, though. What he was saying about them? I know there's not really another option. The toys will starve otherwise. They'll die.
This use of hunger as a weapon can not only strengthen Yarnaby's loyalty to Sawyer, but also account for his intense violent nature. Not only are we a target in order to protect his master, but we're also an opportunity for food. Knowing that he could be forcibly subjected to a life of constant starvation for Sawyer's benefit only makes his circumstances even more tragic. While the other toys can't find food, even if Yarnaby could, there's a chance he wouldn't even be allowed to feed himself. The question could also be raised as to whether Yarnaby could even be saved. Poppy states how she only went ahead with the Hour of Joy as she wanted freedom. This is something that the toys themselves state over and over again. Doey states something similar, hence why he's against burning everything to the ground. If that were to happen, however, where would Yarnaby fit into all of this? Despite the fact that he would have been separated from Sawyer for many years, he has somehow been reunited with him and has gained a sense of motivation and joy. Being with Sawyer is his idea of freedom. This fact is excruciating, as you know that this freedom couldn't be further from the truth. He is being stuck as a prisoner in a cycle of abuse where he will only be used and disrespected. Yarnaby is an adorable lion who only wanted to fill the world with love and had his own life taken in more ways than one, and never got the kindness and love returned to him as he deserved. This kind of heartbreaking story is something we see throughout the series, and it's part of what makes the story so engaging, as many people can relate to it in some way or another. How does Yarnaby's backstory make you feel? Let me know in the comments. Also, check out this next video here and subscribe.